You know, I think probably the most fascinating case of all in the UFO field has to be the 1994 Ariel School in Zimbabwe, South Africa incident. I mean, now if you're not aware of that, in September, mid-September 1994, there was kids at this school, 60 over 62 children during a break in the day in the late morning. They were let out, to play, and all of a sudden they saw beyond the playing area, they saw these three or four disc-shaped objects come land, and next thing you know, there's these short little alien beings came out and began to communicate with them telepathically and start warning them about that technology is bad and it could hurt your environment, and it was a very, very strange experience. And there was 62 kids that experienced this. A lot of them were interviewed not long after by the late Harvard professor John Mack, and it was actually in 2020 in the documentary The Phenomenon. Actually, that was the story served as the exclamation point toward the end of that movie. That was from a documentary filmmaker James Fox, called The Phenomenon, which you could get it online. I actually bought that movie, a digital version of that movie from Amazon. And it's just, to me, this is like, how could you not believe this? I mean, all these kids, they were interviewed shortly after this happened. They all basically told the same story about these little flying saucers that landed outside the playground near the school, late in the morning, and that these beings came out and were communicating with them through their eyes. And all the kids were asked to draw pictures, and all their pictures, they looked pretty much the same. They pretty much drew the same little beings, were these little black suits, these humanoid creatures, and they're basically there for not a long period of time, and they communicated their message telepathically, and then they left. They flew away. Well, you wonder though, was this incident from the aliens? Like, how come this doesn't happen all the time? Just sometimes. There was another similar instance that happened in 1966 in Australia, not as dramatic as this because it didn't involve the beings actually coming out of the craft, but a lot of school kids during a lunch break were outside playing, and they saw these flying saucers. And then government officials, after the incident happened, came in and told them not to talk about this, and told the school officials not to talk about this, and it was hushed up. But yeah, it doesn't happen that often. So you wonder, what was this incident? Why did the aliens do this? That's my question with this. It's not something you hear about all the time. It's not like something. It's not that you don't hear it didn't happen again that I know of. I mean, not as dramatic as this, anyhow. Where there were so many witnesses. Let's look at the situation. These aliens land, but they decide to communicate with young children. I guess there must have been a purpose in that. What's the purpose in that? I guess because they look at children as they're not as dangerous as an adult could be. Adult humans are, children, might not be as afraid actually of these things as an adult. Probably would be more freaked out by this than a child. Like that could be a reason there too. I don't know. But what's the reason for this? What was the reason for this? Was this you wonder, was this a coordinated thing that this species of alien that was here, are they still here? Are they responsible for a lot of these sightings that are still ongoing for all these years? I mean, this is 1994. It's almost 30 years ago now. So was this a coordinated thing? Was this an experiment by the aliens as a whole? Okay, we're going to send this little group down and do this with this kids and see what happens. Was that what it was? Or was this some kind of a rogue thing? Did this little group of aliens that decided to land outside the schoolyard that day, was this like a rogue thing that they decided to do on their own? A lot of things to think about here. What was the purpose of this? Why don't they do this more often? I mean, why did they do that? Why? I mean, this is true. This happened. I mean, I highly recommend you check out this movie called The Phenomenon, and there's a segment toward the end where it really gets into this this incident. This is, to me, this is the most incredible incident of all ufology. I really believe that. I mean, because there were just so many witnesses, and how could you can't, these kids weren't lying. I mean, when you see the kids they actually, John Mack interviewed them at shortly after this happened, you see them all getting interviewed. And then for the purpose of that documentary, years later, Fox, you got a bunch of these witnesses together. Now they're all grown up, and they all related the same story, and it really happened. So, why? Why did the aliens do this? Okay, they warned the kids. They told the kids about, they're sending a message to them regarding technology, that technology is not good, and you could be harming. You're going to harm the environment, harm your planet, and then they leave. And why haven't they tried this again? Again? It's just a very strange. You would think that they would the aliens would do this again in other places. Why just this one time? Again, it begs the question: was this just a rogue? Was this a rogue event where these aliens just say, hey, you know what? Let's go down and we're going to see the kids on our own without permission from whatever kind of government they have to abide to, if there is a government. Who knows how they operate. I'm sure they have to have some sort of society. It has to be rules and regulations, I'm sure, where they come from too. It's very interesting. Well, it'd be interesting. Why don't the aliens do this more often? If they did, that would end this debate. The debate between debunkers, who really don't bring anything to the table at all except nonsense and lies, and people who know that this is reality and that it's happening. And then the government, they can't really, there's nothing they could do anymore. If the aliens were to do something like this on a regular basis, there'd be no denying it anymore. How could you just can't. A bunch of school kids aren't going to get together and say, hey, let's all pretend, like, these are young kids at the time. This isn't, let's all get together and make up a story about aliens landing, and we'll all never change our story for years. That's nonsense. That's impossible. Obviously, these things landed. These kids they drew drawings. They drew pictures of what they saw that was extraterrestrial. It wasn't human. And they were in craft that weren't human-made craft, obviously. Saucers. Classic saucer. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I just like to know more about it. I like to know what the aliens' intentions were. I mean, that's almost 30 years ago now. Why doesn't this kind of thing? If they wanted to do that, if they wanted to send this message, why not try to send the message to more people? Why just that little group? It makes me think that this was a rogue event, because you would think that they'd be doing this all the time. Or, I guess there's other things you could think of, like, just crossed my mind. What if the aliens were sending a message to somebody else? What if the aliens, they know that our government, United States government, and other governments of the world are trying to reverse engineer, and maybe they do. I have trouble believing this. So this is something I can tell you. I find it hard to believe that the government or any government of the world is actually working hand in hand with aliens on anything. I just don't see that, but I don't know. Who knows? That's just, I don't, it doesn't make me right. That's my belief. I don't, but what if they are? What if that is something that's been going on? There have been some stories, there have been reports, they've never been verified. It's hard to know that there's been people who claim that the government does sometimes meet with aliens, work with aliens, And what if this was like, okay, you're not, maybe something was going on. Maybe there was some friction at the time between these entities, the government and the alien species coming here. And they were like, okay, you know what? If you don't start playing ball the way we want you to play ball, we're just going to forget about, keeping this a secret anymore. We'll watch what we're going to do. And then this happens. The government hears about it. And, okay, we'll play ball. Is that something that might happen? Again, this is because this thing has been kept secret, because the government has covered this thing up for so long. We don't know the answers. That's why we want to know. But again, was it rogue? Was it sending a message to somebody, or was it this is an experiment? They were just seeing what would happen. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'd like to know. I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to. It'd be nice if this happened. I'd like to actually, to me, it would be interesting if somebody could actually meet with the aliens, except this time with some video recording equipment, and actually film something like this, and try maybe interview them. A sit down interview. Wouldn't that be interesting? Rather than just taking the word of some little kids, which I actually do believe, or the words of anybody for that matter. It wouldn't be interesting if something like this happened again, but there was some news crews around with cameras, and if these things communicate telepathically. I'm sure they could arrange something where they could turn their telepathic thoughts into audio that we could pick up with our microphones. That would be nice. That would be nice. But yeah, were they rogue? Were they rogues? Was this trying to send a message to somebody, or was this part of a experiment that was agreed upon by their society, or maybe multiple extraterrestrial societies? As hey, we're gonna do this for whatever purpose. Test? Who knows? Why doesn't it happen again? Has it happened again? We don't know about it. Has it happened again and it's been covered up? Maybe it was, in Australia in 1966, apparently the government there did a really good job of covering that incident up. Now it's out now. All the kids that were kids back then in 1966, I mean, they've been interviewed over the years, and there's a lot of them, and they all saw this thing. But again, it wasn't as dramatic as this incident here. This incident here was a little bit more dramatic. You had an actual alien being coming out, beings actually coming out of this spacecraft and communicating with them. Some of the kids were terrified, but they stood there watching this, and they went back to the teachers and told them, and they didn't believe them at first, and then they went back. But then that night, the parents, when the parents heard about this from their kids, they're like, "What's going on here? What happened to my kid yesterday?" The school got a bunch of phone calls, and then UFO researchers came, and luckily this thing was documented. But maybe it's happened since, and we just don't know about it. Maybe something as dramatic as this happened, and we don't know about it. Or, who knows? Again, it's just an interesting thing. They did that, but they didn't. You think they would show up at schoolyards across the world? Why not go everywhere? Why just that one place? It's just strange. What's the reason? Be nice to know that.